This is a video on a menu of tools that I tend to use in my professional business consults and courses for businesses, and in my studio course in China for DTMA, Dirtala Masters Academy. To the extent that rules and regulations and the crusty inflexibility of colleges permits these to be used there, I will. But most colleges are not flexible enough for these. The current graduate school I'm at KO is relatively flexible because it doesn't depend on undergraduate tuition, and therefore it's allowed to do new educational formats, which is a great advantage for its students. Here is one, Structural Cognition. This is the 250-page book I wrote as an undergraduate at MIT on what I found is as a shared tool that the best thinkers at MIT, Harvard, and Wellesley had. Democratic rules of order and scientific rules of order. These are not a violation of somebody else's trademark, because I have a printed version in 1978, I think, of using these words. These are replacements for ordinary meeting. These are semi-structured protocols of meeting that have you design the meeting first in such a way that every topic of the meeting has a different leader and a different treatment decided by the group. So the group decides how each topic will be treated and who will lead the application of that treatment to each topic. And then you execute the design of the meeting that you just designed. Social automata. This is replacement for brainstorms. And this is computer-like ways to use people where you arrange them in certain topological arrays, and you have paths around the arrays that partial products follow. And each person does an assigned mental operation to the partial product they get, and hand that partial result they make to another person or pair of people to do another operation on. And at the end, every 2 minutes you change, or every 3 minutes, or so you change, you finish applying your operation, pass on your partial products, and that means that every 3 minutes or 2 minutes you accumulate a finished design at the end of the path. And so in 2 hours you can easily end up with 40 designs. And then you do other things, usually a different dimensions of difference analysis that the whole group does as a whole, of plotting the dimensions that differentiate those 40 designs you ended up with. And then you interpolate new dimensions of difference and extrapolate new dimensions of difference by ordering those existing dimensions. And then you invent new products for the interpolated new dimensions you just invented and for the extrapolated new dimensions you just invented. And this is a way to absolutely force new thinking beyond all traditional ideas inside of people's heads from a group. It's a thrill compared to brainstorming. You're just in another universe of innovation. Number 4 is social index increasing mini events. Social index level is the, to put it quickly and not totally, it's the level of interest, needs, and capabilities of other people that you are aware of and use in your daily work. And the social index level of average corporation teams and groups is 3%, of Boy Scout troops is 7%, and of high-performance teams is over 21%. So there's an enormous gap between how corporations currently manage social index level. And in fact, there's research showing that if you walk into a person's room for 3 minutes alone and just look at the stuff in their room, you will be able to predict their attitudes and reactions better than if you work with them every day for a year. So the amount of personness, especially in Anglo cultures, the amount of person allowed at work is extremely small. And this makes Western sales organizations and design organizations and production organizations much less effective on a human basis than Japanese ones. Although on a technical basis they can be better, but on a human basis they're much worse. And then I have tools for upping the social index level, which I use with all the events and groups and classes that I get into. And people find as a result of my classes and consults that they know more about each other and they use more of that knowledge. Fractal replacements for prose. This is another interface that I typically like to do. I think prose is 8,000 years old. I think it's a ridiculous interface. You have to decode it in order to find its contents. The decoding is so laborious that people who do the decoding well go to Harvard University and the École Normale Supérieure and the world's best universities. Normal people can't decode it well enough to get the points hidden in the code. An interface that hides its contents is a terrible interface. What you want is an interface and a way of writing that makes visually evident at a glance What are the number of main points? What are their names, and how are they ordered? And that should be visually evidenced within seconds at a glance. I have a thing called fractal page forms that does that, does it beautifully, does it easily. You can train it with ordinary people, and you'll see the web is drifting toward that form of writing. And I believe that if you practice what I'm doing, you're going to be at the end point and the goal that the web ends up at 100 years from now. Next is publishing of readings. There's a thing called structural reading diagrams, where you read the structure of an idea of an author's work rather than the so-called points. And if you read the structuring of their points, you end up with huge contextual information that's missing from the points themselves, which determines 90% of the meaning of those points. I believe that expert readings, and you know this, you know that some people reading what you write smartly can know better what your mind was saying than what you did, even though you wrote it. And so there's a structuring to what you write that you're not conscious of, that an outside reader can spot, clean up, and represent in a diagram form and amaze you with, wow, yes, that's true, that's what I was trying to say. But it's much better said on your diagram than it was in my stuff. And therefore, expert readings have great value. That they've been hindered in an industry of publishing readings, expert and wonderful readings of something. That industry has been stopped and hindered by the derivative work versions of copyright laws. However, I have a intellectual way of getting around that by making each of my readings an improvement on the original count of points, name of points, and ordering of points in the text, which makes it a different text according to the actual science of what reading is and writing is. Then there's emotion management by composing and performing arts. The centralization of life that the United States of America and its technologies have fostered have created big, fat, ugly American bodies who die earlier than other countries. And their big, fat egos and self-promotory personalities, which are ugly, and their unreliability as people, so that immigrants make most of the new businesses in America because they can trust each other, because you can't trust people born and raised in America. And this is a telling condemnation of the American character and the society that Americans have built. And if you cut the immigrant contribution out, you end up with a very bovine bunch of bigoted people who hate people of other skin colors and attitudes, and who are very intolerant of differences of dress and differences of talk and mind, and who are very great killers in terms of their political system, what it votes for, and very great punishers in terms of taking a sixth of their population and locking them up in concrete boxes rather than giving them an education or parents. A very ugly society in many ways. And the management of emotion has been lost in American society, but not in Europe. And it's been lost because people don't compose and perform in front of each other in local units, family units, neighborhood units, and business units. But if you go to Italy and Spain, one of the things you find is people do. If you go to German beer gardens, people do perform. And then I have tools for getting people to compose rather significant arts that are like rather strident, deep, accurate portraits of emotional things at work that some people don't want to admit, and that actually revolutionize and change, continually improve workplaces, because they bring the emotion out, but in a funny or a dramatic, romantic context that makes it not hurt individual careers, so that the whole group can grow emotionally and manage emotion rather than have emotion just erupt from a pretended non-emotional professionalism of work, which the Anglo cultures foster. Mass workshop events. These are a replacement for work processes. They're faster than work processes. You can use more expert procedures than work processes would use. You can have more visibility to the process and the results of the work. You can have more organizational learning. You can already create markets for things developed because the people you want to sell them to are in the workshop helping to develop them under procedures you've designed. They have an enormous, and then we have this thing of web-enabled processes across the world, and we need to weave enough face-to-faceness to keep the people trusting each other across these distributed webs. And mass workshop events are the most cost-effective way to put in just enough face-to-faceness to keep a distributed web process team trusting each other and cooperating well.